This is the NQAT Daily, and today we're going to talk about Ipswich v United and Ruben Amorim's first press conference. Here with Adam. How's it going?
It's going well. It's exciting. I'm caught up in his charms. I'm ready to go.
I know. I mean, I'm not sure if it's sort of the post-press conference glow, lie back, have a cigarette, enjoy the feeling sort of thing. But I think he's charming everyone, isn't he, today? He's a charismatic guy, and you can kind of get caught up in that. Funny thing was, all the journalists at the press conference kind of got caught up in it as well, because none of them asked him about the game on Sunday at all. It was all about him and his tactics and his approach and his place at United. But it was kind of introduction to Ruben Amorim press conference, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a good way for him to get his charms in early. I think that's going to be a real task, is keeping the media on side, particularly with how, I think we can anticipate the performances probably aren't going to be super consistent / exciting game to game. I think we're going to have some bumps in the road, more than likely at least. So it was a good way for him to just introduce himself, integrate, answer some wider scale questions, charm fans like me to the point where you and I are talking before we start recording. And I realized from you talking about it that I didn't even think about the fact he hadn't talked about the game. Had not thought about it once. I was, too busy enjoying that afterwards cigarette.
Yeah. Custis from The Sun yesterday did this hit piece basically saying Amorim's walking into chaos at United, chaos behind the scenes. I mean, it was a nonsense piece anyway, because it was just regurgitating all the criticisms from the last 6 months, and there are valid criticisms. That's all done now. It's kind of clean slate. He's going to take over this team. I thought he was extremely clear on all the points, and some of them relate to the team and tactics and what he's going to deploy on the pitch. And it's fairly clear straight away he's going to start with his system 3-4-3. He just wants to go with it straight away. No sort of soft landing, Antonio Conte style or anything like that. But he's extremely clear about what he wants from players as well, I think. And I mean, that's all really good. He's got the confidence and the presence and the aura, as the kids would say, to do that, and plenty of credit in the bank right now, at least.
Yeah, I think we always have this, or we've gotten used to this honeymoon period after every manager where we give them a certain grace. People have been very quick to point out post-training videos that we've had the same sort of scenarios with Erik ten Hag. But I think, when you talk about the Custis articles and things like that, we're just dredging up the past for the sake of dredging up the past. I think we know about opportunists like Neil Custis who will take certain angles because that's what their paper, to be kind about what that outlet tries to sell. What I liked about the press conference is that he was candid but realistic. So he didn't shy away from the challenge, but also he embraced it at the same time. So he's talked about, I think he spoke about this initially in his first interview with United, but they can't take too long to get things going. But he's also spoken about not getting caught up in formations. I think there's been so much talk about the three at the back and the wing backs. And he's like, I think he was talking about that we don't really need to think about that way. It's the roles they play on the pitch. And so that makes the Ipswich game more exciting in terms of, you're saying the 11 won't be too different. So what are the roles that we're going to see them play? Mason Mount's potentially going to have a starting place, Lenny Yoro. The back three is a curiosity for me. I don't know about you because of the injuries that we've got at centre back. It's really exciting. It's weird to have this giddy optimism again. I always look forward to match day, but this does feel a little bit different.
Well, it's nice to actually feel like we can look forward to the weekend's game without dread and fear, which had kind of got to that point, right? Not to the point of ever wanting United to lose because it might hasten Erik's departure or anything like that. Nothing like that, but just kind of dread about what was coming and the negativity around it. And we don't have to feel like that, at least for now. I mean, it's going to be absolutely crushing when Ipswich win a couple to nil on Sunday, isn't it? But for now, we can all feel optimistic. And I think Ruben was like, his clarity around his thinking, which apparently is part of his sort of philosophy for this first week: be simple and be clear. don't overcomplicate things straight away. He said this before. Is the right one. Just get the basics in. He talked about identity over formations. Apparently, he's been fairly bemused about all the chatter about a back three. I guess because it's fairly alien in the Premier League. I mean, it's not like it's really alien. I mean, we had Conte's side for a while. Pepper's played three at the back, plenty enough. But it's not the most common formation, and he's been a bit bemused about all the chatter around that. And I thought he gave some really good answers, right? It was like, it doesn't really make any difference. Difference between 4 and 3 is not that big, and it's just about identity. He's got a system, he's going to play it. After all, it's going to be about whether the players take on in those instructions or not, and whether they're good enough or not. Which leads us into thinking about the Ipswich game, because he did talk a little bit about things that although he wasn't specifically asked about that game much, and about the opposition, he was asked about things like positions and formations, and gave us a little bit of a clue to what he's going to do. So you talked about at the back. That's an interesting one, because obviously Lenny Yoro has been training this week. So is Shaw and so is Malacia. We don't know about the status of their fitness at all, because no one asked about it.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, normally it's like Carl Anker. I saw the Athletic put a pod out today. I haven't listened to it yet, but normally it's Carl Anker that's asking about tactics and formations and personnel and stuff like that. But I don't suppose he got the chance to this time.
Yeah, I think people we get so caught up in maybe it gives him Ruben. I would say gives him a glimpse into what it's going to be like at Manchester United, but the scrutiny on every single detail. And I think we worry so much about formations because, one, we're not used to it at Manchester United. And I think he sort of was saying it in a way that, formations and all that sort of thing, he was talking about, it's about how the players are going to execute their roles on the day. And like everyone operating as a collective, like he was saying, we have to operate better in defensive transitions, and players have to work harder and things like that. I think he's like, it's more about the process. Like, I think formations sometimes just make things easier when we play FIFA and Football Manager. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that's perfectly, yeah.
But
he talked a lot about identity, and he talked about some specific things. So he talked about the defensive transitions, as you said. I mean, Ten Hag got so caught up in the need for a high press, and then sometimes John McKenzie at TIFO talks about this. Like, I think one of the things he said is stop talking about the high defensive line and talk about the trigger at the point that defensive line, starts to cycle backwards and drop into its defensive shape. And so you got two things with United under Ten Hag: really, really high press, and then a very quick trigger to drop backwards, and it led to the donut in midfield. And Ruben didn't really talk about that specifically, but he did notice that, we've got to be good at, getting back into our positions quickly. He said that specifically. He also talked about the wing backs, because he said it's easier to teach a fullback that position than it is to teach a winger that position. And I think it's been noted quite a lot at Sporting that he put attacking players in those positions. But I think that kind of maybe points to Dalot and Mazraoui having those roles for the moment, rather than speculation about Garnacho or whoever else taking those roles.
Yeah, I think so. And it sort of lends itself to me to sort of building on a strong defensive foundation. Like, Amorim's teams all defend really well as a collective team unit, and maybe it points to building off a strong defensive base to start with in his tenure. So for all United's struggles this season, they actually have defended quite well. I mean, Andre Onana's been key to that with his overperforming in goal, but maybe we're just going to have to start out with 5 defenders and build off of that while he keeps things simple, as you said at the start. Keep things simple and build out from there. It creates a lot of competition for spots in that front three, a lot of discussion about that. Let's be honest, there's a lot of discussion about every single thing at the moment because it lends itself to a story that the media can run with, whether it's Marcus Rashford's future, if Anthony is going to be a reformed wing back, if Garnacho is going to get a chance to play wing back, if Rasmus Højlund and Marcus Rashford are going to be competing to play number 9. I think it's all really exciting problems to have, because to me, it's like a survival of the fittest now. So you have while Ruben Amorim doesn't get a preseason to get everything right, this is like a half season long audition, or however long, months long audition for players to figure out if they have a future at the club. Doesn't matter who you are. Everyone has a fresh slate. There's going to be competition for spots because it's a bloated squad, and it's not a bloated squad of quality. It's a bloated squad of depth. So, like for Mason Mount, it's a perfect sort of redemption arc scenario if he can stay fit. There was a little bit of chatter on Twitter that he's been someone who's really impressed in training. How true that is, we don't know. But I think it's a really exciting scenario because I think you're just better off getting in the manager now, figuring out the problems. And he talked about like the recruitment part as well, which was another interesting point for me and how they're going to approach it. They're not going to know straight away who they need. They're going to need to go through data and scouting. And I can't remember the exact quote, so forgive me. But they have that months long sort of runway now to figure that out and figure out what they're going to need to target in the summer. So it's also sort of lend itself to the no buying in January, no funds in January speculation that we've seen. You and I have talked about previously. But I just see it all as opportunity, even if there's negatives that come out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there'll be a few headlines because he talked about him being the last word. Or he's asked whether he had the final say on transfers, and he didn't exactly answer it directly, but he said, of course, the coach is key to it, kind of hinted at there being a team there. But yes, I don't think the new management team is going to foist upon him any player that he doesn't really want. That's not going to work out. It's going to be a team approach, but clearly he is head coach, so he's not going to own all of that. But they will look to buy players for his system because they're comfortable with that. Now, talking about systems and players, like it is quite a large squad, and now it looks kind of unbalanced because, as he said, it's a squad built for another system. So we don't have enough wing backs or any. Maybe there's an argument to say that. Maybe Masraoui is the most obvious, but even there, his lack of physicality may be an issue. We have 8 into 3 spots up front. And that is going to be some serious competition. And I guess you could go through a fun exercise of ranking them. Who's bottom of that 8? Is it Josh Alexei or is it Anthony at the moment? Not sure. But a lot of players that you would say, hey, in those 2 narrow forwards or 2 number 10s, whatever you want to frame it as, a lot of players who'd feel very comfortable in those positions. Maybe it's 9. I mean, because you might actually say that Christian Eriksen is good for one of those double number 10 spots, even if he's been sort of an 8 at United. A bit thin in midfield, obviously, no surprise there. And then back, well, there's 5 central defenders for 3 at the back, if they're all fit, but they're never all fit. So at the weekend, we're not sure whether is Euro fit enough. I mean, he's been training for several weeks now. So he could be. Obviously, in those training videos that were posted, he featured heavily in those. De Ligt should be fit. It looks like Martinez, assuming he didn't pick up anything in his trip, because he went back to Argentina but didn't play. So as long as he's all right from that trip, he should be available. Lindelof may or may not be available. I remember on the video
sounds like he picked
this, we were talking about his availability. Yeah, it sounded like it. Yeah, and Maguire's obviously not. He seems to be doing a lot of MUTV content at the moment, which might tell you that he's available for that. So, yeah, it may be a bit thin. And Johnny Evans should be okay. So maybe we've got 3, depending. Luke Shaw has been training quite a lot, obviously not played any games at all. Tyrone Wallace is playing 1/2 of an under-21 game. Perhaps he'd be more suited to on the wing-back spots anyway, who knows. So, yes, like some imbalance there. He's just going to have to make do for the next 6 months or so. Anything in January is likely to be a loan, I suspect, rather than a big purchase. And then they will throw everything at 1 or 2 central midfielders and most definitely a left wing back in the summer.
Well, yeah, I think the only possible deal would be the buyback clause on Alvaro Carreras' deal, right? I think that's in about the 20 million euro range. So I think that's a justifiable January purchase, depending on the financial situation in the club. But yeah, the back 3 is the biggest point of interest to me because, like, is Lenny Euro ready for 90 minutes? If I would assume at right centre back, and then you've got De Ligt to play that. He's in a little bit of a weird scenario because he's not a real strong ball playing centre back, but that's what those three positions really require. So he's quite a point of intrigue. And one thing that Amorim doesn't appear to do, doesn't manufacture players into positions that they don't play. So we're not likely to see, unless it's absolute emergency, we're not likely to see Casemiro playing centre back ever again. And then we've got old reliable and Johnny Evans. So you think he's a lock to play, but the rest of it, does Lisandro Martinez play 45 minutes, 60 minutes? Luke Shaw plays 30 in that left slot, and then you just Mazraoui and Delo have to keep playing every 90. They have to keep starting every game for the foreseeable. It's really interesting.
Yeah. It is. Over time, I suspect he'll look at the extremely successful under-18s and almost successful under-21s and have a look at that group and see what he can pluck out of there. He obviously had a extremely strong record in bringing young players through and a lot of trust in very young players as well. At Sporting, for the weekend, yes, probably not too many options, but I do like the fact that he's got a system and he's not going to be putting too many square pegs into round holes, because Ten Hag did that all the time and he didn't serve him or the club very well. Central midfield at the weekend is going to be an interesting one because Duarte played for Uruguay, didn't get back until Friday, so he's had like one training session. Obviously, Ruben knows him really well, right? So he doesn't have to get to know this player. So I'd be very tempted, unless he's horribly jet lagged and there's some kind of problem with him, just to play him anyway, because that partnership with Casemiro has been very fruitful in the 4 games under Ruud van Nistelrooy. Assuming that Casemiro is okay from his extremely tiresome trip to Disney World with the family that got Gary Neville so irked over the break.
Oh yeah, hopefully he's recovered the awful jet lag from a 5-6 hour flight and the exhausting activities that one might partake in a Disney World trip. You just can't imagine he's not going to be up to 90 minutes,
Mind you, if he flew in a private jet, actually they're quite small after that, and they're not that comfortable. It's actually more comfortable flying first on commercial. So a friend told me, not that I do that kind of thing. Yeah. All right, Ipswich under Kieran McKenna. Clearly he was under consideration for the United job back in the summer. They talked to him around about the cup final. And extremely young and inexperienced, so I think that probably counted against him in the end. But did wonders with Ipswich, getting them promoted twice in a row. Difficult start to the season, no surprise. I mean, they spent a fair bit of money in the summer. It's just you can't spend enough, can you, as a championship side coming up to immediately be competitive?
Yeah, well, he's kept the bones of the side that's come up from League One, and now they've added some money, and it's taken them time to adjust to either the new signings or the Premier League itself. I think when you play the style of progressive football that they do, when you play sides that are, a higher quality that do that better, you're going to have to adjust. You can't always play that positive style. So it has been an adjustment period, but they were good against Tottenham. They were 2-0 up. Bentancur scored. They're now suspended. Bentancur scored late.
Yeah.
For Spurs to make it a little bit nicer on the scoreboard. But it's an interesting challenge. What I like about it, just from a purely narrative perspective, is that Ruben Amorim gets to go against someone who was once speculated for the United job. He gets to get that out of the way early. I think it's a good start. So if you can get that, keep the positive momentum going, get a victory. I don't think we're expecting outstanding football, but it's the type of opponent you'd want to face first up, I think. A side that, it's a newly promoted side. At the end of the day, it's a newly promoted side. They should get the job done with the lack of injuries in the squad. It might not be packed full of quality, but there's more than enough there to get the job done.
Yeah. I mean, I like some of the Ipswich players. I mean, I think I was pretty dismissive about Liam Delap in the summer because it's a large fee, 20 million for a kid who basically scored no goals in the Championship before. But I mean, what I like about him is he takes a shot, right? Don't shoot, don't score. I mean, it's the simplest rule for a striker, isn't it? And he takes a lot of shots, and he's very brave with it, as well as physical as well. So I think he's done well. I think he's got 6 or 7 goals this season, so he's doing pretty well. Murray Hutchison, I don't know, he's had the same impact. Obviously came for a reasonably big fee from Chelsea. Looks a nice player, doesn't he? And sort of fairly flexible. Probably play off the right, I guess, for Ipswich. But who else? They've they've basically got their back four from the Championship, haven't they? Which is part of the problem. They've conceded, there's conceded 4 against Arsenal, 4 against Brentford. Who else they conceded? Another one they conceded 4 against. So that's been the biggest problem, conceding goals.
Yeah, I actually don't mind their transfer strategy, to be honest. I think a lot of Championship clubs, when they come up, they tend to buy cast-offs from bigger clubs. But what they've done is they've targeted youth, so upside signings. It's risky, but it's probably a better plan long-term. Like if you can get those Delap and Hutchison signings to wait for one of those hit, and you can always see the success that Delap's having. It'd be nice if our striker was able to take that many shots. That's the sort of signings that clubs should be making at that level. That's just my opinion on it. But Delap is that sort of player.
I think it's a good strategy. Yeah.
Yeah. And Delap's that sort of player you can imagine. People were joking about this. Like when Liam Delap scores the winner and then like the 9th minute or 11th minute and it just starts a horror show. That's going to be the start of the meltdown. So hopefully not. But they definitely possess some threats.
They do. I mean, I agree with you entirely about their transfer strategy. Going for younger players just means that if it all goes wrong and they get relegated, and the bookies had them favourite to get relegated at the start of the season, I don't think it'd reflect badly on McKenna. It's not going to ruin his reputation, given what he'd achieved before. And those players are sellable. Like, so if you buy a 35-year-old on large wages and go, he's experienced in the Premier League, you can't get rid of him. You're going to have to suck up the costs in the Championship. And Liam Delap, given his start this season, if he goes on to score 15 goals, they'd sell him immediately, probably for a profit as well. So it's not bad thinking at all. Kind of interesting that they were taken over by a private equity firm, or it's basically a pension fund that owns Ipswich.
Is it really? I did not know that.
But yeah. Follow the money in the Premier League. It's interesting. So, I mean, of all the dirty, filthy money that's in the Premier League, this is it's not the dirtiest, is it? But it's just it's a good investment. We
know there's different levels of dirt, I think, when it comes to money in the Premier League.
Oh, God. Yeah. There's Manchester City, ... way down everybody else, right?
Yeah, I think
although Villa are getting up there now. So
I don't know if you saw the story about that when Aston Villa writer posted about the investment in the Aston Villa owners, I believe he's Egyptian, in his hedge fund
he's Egyptian, he's UAE based. Yep.
And he's now based in the UAE. Yep. It's all becoming very cheeky bedfellows, if you ask me. But luckily the vote didn't come to pass. But we're not talking about that today.
We're not. We'll do a deeper piece on that at some point because it was interesting. Yes, City, Newcastle, and Villa jerking each other off. Just lovely.
Well, they managed to get 4 votes, so good for them. That's a real win.
Real win. I mean, we'll get dragged through the mud in court for years or months on end over this again. Anyway, back to Ipswich. Not the dirtiest money, but I mean, owners will be looking to make a profit on their 30 million investment. They could sell it tomorrow, probably almost 10x it, given what they have at Portman Road now and their success. And I mean, definitely if they manage to survive this season, because obviously although there's this kind of feeling around second season or the second album troubles and all of that, the fact is you get an extra 100 and something million on top of the 100 and something million you had before, so you have a massive advantage over clubs coming up from the Championship. So that alone should tell you that there's more chance of success in the second year, but they've got to get past that. And the results to date don't suggest it. I mean, they got the first win last weekend, but apart from that, a whole bunch of really bad results, a few crappy draws, even got knocked out of the EFL Cup by Wimbledon. So not been great for McKenna so far, but as you said, like super brave. They press aggressively, they play good football, they push the fullbacks up. We'll see whether they do that against United, because If they don't do that, what they're going to have is one player in Leon Delap against our three defenders. And we'll see how much of Ruben's instructions managed to get through to De Ligt. He'll have to push into midfield just to not waste personnel there. But we'll see. There's a few interesting tactical things to think about, given the differences in style and shape that we're going to get.
I think it's a first chance. Yeah, it's definitely that first chance to see how the teams poke holes in that three at the back system, and the players can't be expected to be 100% up to speed. So, will they try push the fullbacks up, get in behind the wing backs, test out the wide defense and the channel running? We know that Lissandro Martinez does struggle sometimes to defend in space. Lenny Yoro is an excellent open spaces defender, so they might be more inclined to test on the right. We've seen, was it Adama, and who was the second player who really tested out Lissandro? He struggled against fast wide runners. So will they use Hutchison in the same sort of capacity? If it's him or if it's Luke Shaw, we're just testing out his hamstrings. It's probably it's a good opponent to test out those things, as identify those weaknesses early so Amorim can get to work. He's going to keep things simple. As you said, Casemiro and Ugarte, if they're the central midfield pairing, they'll provide a strong defensive base. So for me, it's more, I'm really more curious about the combination of the three up front. Does Bruno Fernandes play as an 8? Does he play as a 10? Because I read a really good piece by the Devil's DNA, and he was explaining how that second central midfielder does play quite an attacking role. And so if Kobbie Mainoo isn't going to be able to play 90 minutes, which doesn't seem likely, straight back off his injury, does Bruno push back, or again, is it Eriksen? So all good problems to have, but hopefully it doesn't cause us too many stresses on Sunday.
All right. Sounds like a good place to stop. It should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Wherever weird. You are is going to be ridiculously early in the morning, isn't it? So
3:30 a.m. and but it's going to be very hot all weekend. So I'll be glad to be not in the heat.
All right, enjoy it. Enjoy it, everyone. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Adam, and we'll catch you again soon.